Hello, welcome back to Refractions. I am Stephen Mallon, your host, and I am very happy that we have got a old friend and colleague and collaborator and my gallerist, Daniel Aycock from Front Room Gallery, joining us. So, Daniel, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Steve. This is really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that this is going to be kind of like one of those conversations that we have in the back room of the gallery, but just everyone in the world is getting to listen in on. So,
Sure.
but can you tell us, because I know you've been in business for 25 years, but how did the gallery begin?
Okay, started it in Williamsburg, Roebling Metropolitan in 1999. And really the whole impetus for this was something that I kind of look back on and understand a little bit better now. When I had gotten to New York as a graduate student at SBA in the early 90s, Um, the whole art market had pretty much just crashed right before I got there, but being a kid, I didn't really understand that. So by the late 90s, it seemed like everybody I knew was an artist and there was nowhere to show. And there was this amazing energy in Williamsburg, and I just thought that that would be an interesting thing to do to start a gallery. I had no idea I'd be doing it 25 years later, but it developed a lot along the way.
Who do you remember who your first show was?
It was a group show. Um, Sean Himmerly, who I am still showing, was in the show. And I believe Ethan Crinson, Amanda Alec, um, yeah, maybe Tracy Chang. I don't know. It was 25 years ago. I could look it up pretty easily, but they were mostly people that I knew from School of Visual Arts who we.
Yeah. I remember the first time I walked into Front Room and I had just agreed to do an exhibition at another gallery and I was looking for reviewers for an ASMP fine art portfolio review that I was producing. And I walked into your space and my jaw just dropped and I was just like, I want to be here. And Sasha Bezebov had a show up and I think it was of the forest fires from
Oh yeah, that
California.
Sasha's an amazing photographer, and those 4x5, like large format, they were incredible.
Yeah, I think there was like a triptych in one of the galleries that was like, I don't know, three 72 by 96 prints like stacked next to each other. It was just this, monumental um experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great space in Williamsburg, definitely.
Oh, well, thank you. And yeah, I remember that too, because then we will not mention this other gallery's name, but we did have to deal with, oh, how are we going to do this that would be, I don't know, diplomatic. We didn't want to upset her or you, and neither one of us wanted to really make any waves because it seemed like, well, we got to be fair. But, and we worked it out, although I think in the end she was kind of still a little not super happy about it, but she said she was.
She understood.
Hmm.
I mean, in my, innocence, when you offered the first solo show in 2009 for the Flight 1549 work, I called her and I was all excited saying, hey, Front Room just offered me a solo show. And I didn't realize it was kind of like telling, the person that I was like
Oh,
living with
that's
that I met this.
horrible.
Hey, I found this cooler apartment in Soho. I'm about to leave.
Yeah.
Aren't you excited for me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it worked out, but yes, that's you don't do that.
No, that's one of the things probably not to do in general. Um, so yeah, so how long did you stay in Williamsburg?
We left in 2017, so almost 18 years. And we saw a lot of change during that time period. When I first opened it up in 99, there were probably just around 20 galleries in Williamsburg, and most of them were artist run. And it was a really good environment. I mean, I've heard, surely this is an exaggeration, but that 20,000 artists lived in Williamsburg in the late 90s. It seemed believable. But then through that, there was, everybody's familiar with the development of Williamsburg at this point. We got to see it go from that to being about 65 galleries and really just a huge scene, and then tapering down to almost none. I mean, by the time we left, it was already well on its way out.
Yeah, I mean,
And
how many there were in Williamsburg? There weren't too many left. I mean, galleries were moving into Bushwick. The
yeah, and
Dumbo had its own,
Manhattan,
and Manhattan.
and just closing too. That happens a lot with galleries, but yeah, so went from about 17 or 18 to about 65 to, I think there's one there now, maybe two. And kids
Yeah,
going around there have no idea there were ever any galleries.
no. And I mean, you were pretty involved with the art scene because you had the non-for-profit organization as well that was helping promote like all of the galleries
Yeah.
succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing two things. There was WAGMAG, which was the non-for-profit, which originally started out as Williamsburg and Greenpoint Monthly Art Guide, but then expanded to include Bushwick and Gowanus and Dumbo and all these other neighborhoods. So we just dropped the acronym and just made it WAGMAG, Brooklyn Art Guide. And yeah, and it had maps of all the neighborhoods, and they were distributed through all the neighborhoods. And that was pretty interesting because I pretty much knew all the galleries in Brooklyn. And then in Williamsburg for a while, I was the president of the Williamsburg Gallery Association, which, if anybody out there is not gotten a chance to be a president of a nonprofit where everybody disagrees with each other, I would completely recommend that.
It's good character building.
Yes.
Um, and WAGMAG had a great benefit.
Yeah.
Like benefit. It's like you had a fundraiser. Can you talk a little bit about how your benefit was structured?
Okay. It's funny because when we first started, it was really not that common to do this kind of format, but now it's pretty common for places to ask artists to donate to sell the work in some raffle style thing. But we hadn't really seen it that much when we started it. And the one thing that we did that was different was that since we were in touch with all the galleries in Brooklyn, we asked all the galleries to ask one of their artists to donate, which created an interesting scenario because all these galleries came to see their artists, and they met the other galleries who they wouldn't have met. And then artists who donated got the chance to meet all of these galleries. And I mean, it was just it was fun in general. We had this raffle machine that we created that it had a water bottle, like a big 5-gallon water bottle drum hooked up to a shop vac, and it would blow all the tickets around. And everybody would stop too because it was really loud because everybody's talking, and then you turn it on and everybody stops. Oh, what is it? What is it? And then we pulled out the ticket and shouted out the number on a megaphone. And then we had assistants go and walk through like Vanna White, like holding the artwork up over their head and announcing who got it.
That was a whole
everybody loved that. That was
a whole performance aspect of it, I
Yeah.
remember. Oh yeah. No, I think there was, and for the artists, I think that was one of the benefits. Like you said, it's like it got a chance to meet, other people in the community, other artists, other galleries, the collectors, the people that support
Yeah.
the arts. And so I think it was, you're donating a piece of art, but you're helping, a non-for-profit that is supporting all of the galleries. And it's just kind of that, community effort that everyone's benefiting from. And
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't charge galleries to be on the map or charge them to be listed in WAGMAG. So the benefit was, it was pretty crucial for printing it. And I think there was incentive to be involved in that because, we weren't charging him a monthly fee or anything to be involved in this. And yeah, it did also turn out that, they weren't all just the artists weren't all coming through the gallery. There were also other artists who would donate, who would somehow often end up showing with some of the galleries later on.
nice.
Which, yeah.
Yeah, good days. So, and then you moved to the Lower East Side.
Yes, that was in 2017. We actually did what we could to make sure there was almost no gap between being in Williamsburg and being in the Lower East Side. We left in Williamsburg, I think, in February and opened up in the Lower East Side in March. Um, I'm not sure why we felt like that was so important. And in retrospect, I think we should have taken a break. but but yeah. And we were on Ludlow Street and Hester. And it was a beautiful little block. Completely different kind of space than the kind of sprawling lofts type space that the Williamsburg space had been. This was like a kind of a modernist storefront with glass windows that went all the way across, and you could see the whole gallery from outside.
Yeah, there was a great thing about that, and a little bit, it's like you could literally see the entire exhibition without having to go into the gallery.
Yeah.
And I wonder sometimes, if that was like people were able to walk by and not have to engage.
It's hard to say what that helped with. There were definitely people who didn't come in, but I mean, we also had people who bought work later that I don't know if they ever actually even came in, but they saw it. And then during COVID, um, Emily Roz's show was up. I mean, the week they declared the lockdown, March 2020, Emily Roz's show was supposed to open in the gallery, and it never had an opening, but it did get a New York Times review, and it had, pictures and a really good review. And I thought, well, maybe that was helpful that they knew that people coming down the street could actually see it without coming in, because you couldn't go anywhere at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Then at that time, absolutely beneficial to have a space that you could see from the street without entering.
Yeah.
For sure. While you were there, I remember at least one open call that ASMP was involved in, and you continued to be a reviewer at the portfolio reviews for like basically all the reviews that happened in person afterwards, and include some of the virtual ones.
Yeah.
What are some of the other reviews that you've done in the past that you like?
Oh, well, PhotoFest is always great. And I mean, I know PhotoFest, but PhotoFest is a whole different thing because it's um everybody travels there mostly. And that there's the benefit of PhotoFest is that you're usually all staying in the same hotel. And there's a lot of mingling between the photographers and the reviewers who are from all different sorts of situations. I was one of the few gallerists. There were some museum people, but also publications and I don't know, the whole gambit of people that people in the photo world would want to see. And so PhotoFest, definitely. I've done Palm Springs photo review and in New York though, at which was at Javits, and also let's see, New York Times has a photo review.
Yep.
That that's more journalistic though. I mean, I specifically more journalistic than I would say PhotoFest or ASMP even.
Yeah, that is it's the only like juried free portfolio review. Like ASMP is free, but you've got to be a member. But we
Yeah.
don't filter anybody from coming to the review. Like the New York Times has to go through whatever their review process is to get in. Santa Fe has a similar setup, but it's another, pay situation. And
Yeah.
so like what do you look for? Like when you're at these portfolio reviews, like what are some things that are like red flags or
Oh, red flags. Let's
a
see.
few?
Well, yeah, I mean, at PhotoFest in particular, I think ASMP might do this too. You tell them what you don't want to see, and sometimes that helps. I mean, because you can see the first photo and think, "Oh no, I'm gonna hate this whole review," and it's gonna be 20 minutes. And so I mean, I know at well, I'm not gonna say specific types of work that I've asked not to see, but I think a lot of people have asked not to see certain things that about the human form and things like that. But red flags. Actually, in a way, at the photo reviews, it's kind of bad if the photographer doesn't really want to talk that much because you're meeting them in person. You want to hear where they're coming from. And I mean, I've had photo reviews, especially at Photo Fest, where somebody comes in with a translator and the photographer doesn't talk at all, and then they just look over at the translator and kind of nod. Then I tell them translator something and they tell them something. And I don't see how that can ever go well as a review. Even if I like the work, everything gets lost in the translation.
So that's interesting. So translation or not, if the photographer is like too quiet about the work and not like, talking about, what the concept is, or, something along this line, and it's just going from picture to picture, it's harder to make like how it's harder to establish a connection with them. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
And sometimes I even like to look, you can't look at too much work, but I like to look back at some of the other, if they have older work, I like to look at some of those things too, so I can tell where they're coming from. Because in these photo reviews, you meet one person after another, and sometimes where they're coming from seems kind of like it's just out of left field, and it helps to see what they started with.
Okay. Um, so how do you like, if they bring in a box, they've got a portfolio of prints, and you're going through and you're already knowing that it's not a fit for what you're looking for. This is not responding.
Yeah.
Do you just, what are some things as artists we should notice that like this isn't working out? Like the first date's not going great. Like
Well,
how do we
I mean, actually, when you said red flags, at first I wasn't sure what you meant by that, but um, there are always people who let's just start off with what I think is very functional is when people who go to these reviews and they have done it before and they know that it's about building community and getting input on their work, and they're just happy to meet you and hear your input. And maybe if something comes out of that, that's great, but that's not exactly what they're asking you for. Those are the best reviews. The reviews that are bad are when somebody sets stuff down, they don't talk that much, and then they're like, can I have a show in your gallery now?
like boom,
And
that's it.
yeah, sometimes you can tell that's going to happen right away, and you're like, oh, I have met people who I loved. And actually, there have been people several that we have had shows with, but I didn't tell them that then. I would, it's a process, and you don't just say, oh, I like you, we're giving you the next show. And if somebody feels like it could be that way, it's going to go badly for everybody, because they're going to be disappointed and they don't understand the system. And um, I would advise, excuse me, I would advise people not to expect anything to happen right at the review, or even maybe right after the review, but to follow up with everybody, because that's where stuff happens.
For
And I have
sure.
definitely sent other people, excuse me, I've definitely sent other people, other gallerists, work that I didn't think worked for us, but that I liked.
How would you describe like your aesthetic or their gallery's aesthetic? Because I
You
feel
know,
like there's a look, but what do you think there's?
it is hard to pin it down, actually. But I mean, since we show about 50% photography and about 50% painting, sculpture, I would say you're right, there is a look, and it isn't, oh, this is I don't know, minimalist or maximalist or, you know, photojournalistic. It is I think that one of the first things we do is we really look at somebody's craft and their ability to produce something that is really grabbing, that like whether it's a photo or a painting, all the people we show are really skilled, and it shows. And but beyond that, there is an underlying concept or meaning that we try and maybe surprise people with by sucking them in with, oh, how beautiful it is. And then, oh, it's about the environment. Oh, this makes a political statement about this or that. And yeah, so it's a combination of concept and craft that brings it together.
It's I'm really happy at the gallery just because of the quality of work. I think that there's just you've built and found this great pool of talent, and that we all have our things that we chase and everything. But I do think that there's a great amount of talented photographers that you show. So that thank
Well,
you.
thank you. I mean, it builds on itself. So, like you said, when you came into the show and you saw Sasha Bezabov's work, you said, wow. And you saw Sean's work too, and you said, well, I want to be in the company of these people, and it definitely helps when we meet artists or artists we know, we think about showing, yeah, they like our program. Um, and that's not something you can just start out with. You have to work at it for years, really.
Has your taste evolved? Like, has do you feel like it's evolved with the market and adjusted based on what you're seeing, or
Um, well, I don't know if I could say my taste has evolved. I mean, there's still a lot of things that I like that we can't show at the gallery. Things do have to kind of fit within our mold. Um, but when I first started the gallery, before Kathleen got involved, I was a little bit more gung-ho on showing more conceptual work. So it was pretty much mostly conceptual work and photography at that point. And I was adamant against showing paintings for a long time. Because I just thought, well, everybody shows paintings, we don't, but I caved on that one. And we have some pretty good painters that we're showing too. And people like Tom Broadbent who do conceptual installations and paintings. So there are crossovers there.
I will always remember Tom when I was talking about being exhausted, and he was like, "Yeah, your finger must be really sore."
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little competition there. You and Sean too.
Yeah, we're in a nice friendly
Yeah.
um so COVID.
Yes.
um
That was uh that pretty much upended our whole plan. I mean, as it did for everybody. But I think it was the impetus for us moving to the Hudson Valley a little earlier with the gallery space. I
yeah,
mean, we were already living in Kingston and commuting down to the city, but when everything was shut down for, a year and a half, it it wasn't making us sense for us to try and stay through all of that. And I I don't even know if that neighborhood has completely come back yet. Um, there's, I guess, differing opinions on that. But so during COVID was a real. I was thinking about this before the interview. Um, there was a time period where everybody had closed down their galleries, and nope, everybody just hunkered down in their house for a while, scared. But then there was a new kind of energy where people were making sourdough bread and watching the Tiger King, and people were buying a lot of artwork at that point online. And all the galleries I know said, wow, we're really selling a lot. Then that tapered off again,
yeah.
and people were happy to be back into regular spaces again.
There was that brief window, right, where like people had money because they weren't traveling,
Yeah,
and or they're working from home, and they just needed to make their home office like more attractive to be
yeah,
working in, so they wanted to get some art inside of it. And yeah, there was like a year of great internet sales.
yeah.
And
And there was a strange development with that I'm thinking about lately, as this whole interactive gallery thing, which we did. I don't know if I should say the name of the company, but they were great. But they would come out with a camera to the gallery space and do these three-dimensional photos, and well, it was like a video walkthrough of the gallery, but it was actually photographic. So you could go to our website and it, I don't know, it's as close as you could feel to having been in the gallery. And I saw that, and then other companies who were doing more virtual things that worked more on one level or another. Some of them kind of looked a little video game-ish, but there was a point there, I think, where people were thinking, wow, maybe it doesn't matter where you are as a gallery, and maybe galleries everywhere can do this, and that's the new model, which it kind of felt that way until it didn't. Then when people could take their masks off and go to see people in public, that was over, I
Yep.
feel like.
And all of a sudden, it really mattered to see the work in person again.
Yeah.
Yep. And but you still have like multiple websites, like where
Yeah.
people can buy the artwork, right? Like how many different sites do you manage?
Platforms. I think
Platforms?
we're just on 3 now. And yeah, they're kind of a good way of introducing, well, especially like architects and interior designers and people around the world to the artworks. But they kind of anonymize the galleries. So we would prefer it if people just went to our website and bought the work. Um,
Is there like a percentage, like when people are searching and contacting, I guess there's a number, certain people are coming through the portal on the third party vendor. And
uh-huh.
then when the collectors are reaching out to you, are like, I kind of imagine that sometimes they're gonna call in, it's like, hey, I think I saw a show. I think you had like basketball hoops or something. It was like on the back wall on the right. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Do you get those calls?
We get that, yeah. Oh, and Zoe Weatherall, who's showing up at the gallery right now, she had somebody who said they saw this show in the Lower East Side. Well, I mean, this was last year, but they saw the show, and 4 years later called us and they said they'd been thinking about this particular photo the whole time, and now they were ready to buy it. And we never saw them or talked to them or anything, but they came in and didn't say they were interested or saw it through the window. We'll never really know. But they called us 4 years later about something they saw in the gallery. And that happens more often than you would think.
So they see it, they don't tell you, they just make a note of it, sign up on the email list, and
Yeah.
sooner or later, hopefully those people that walk in that say hi, put their name down, and then walk out, you know, 5 years later, 2 years later,
Yes.
may end up sending an email saying, I'm ready to get this piece of that
I
size.
feel like we can say that has happened with your work, although I can't think of the specific person where they had taken the card from the show and put the card up on their refrigerator. And every day they'd look at the card on the refrigerator, and then a couple of years later, they finally decided to buy the picture.
The refrigerator just wasn't big
Yeah.
enough. Um, how are you, like, I know how my editions are with the prints, we do the 3 sizes and editions
Yeah.
of 5 or 10 and everything. How are the rest of the photographers? Are they
They
similar
they
or?
are pretty similar to you, actually. Although I think your method is one of the best working ones. So I mean, if we're talking to somebody who's starting portfolio off and wondering what they should price it at, what they should size it at, we pretty much advise them to do it something like yours, where there's a small one, which is, I don't know, around 20 by 30, depending on the format, and a big one, which is 40 by 60 or 40 by 50, and then a middle one. And most people buy the middle ones. Um, there are some people that have the additions more stagger, have the prices go up each time. Um, and like in yours, where it goes up, let's see, on the third one, it goes up halfway more. And then
On
on
the
the
fourth one.
fourth one, it goes a halfway more. And then on the fifth one, it's twice as much. I feel like that is a pretty good fit too, because it's really easy to understand. And people get confused, well, especially non-photo people, worry about editions because, historically, there have been people who did pretty bad things with double printing editions and stuff. So you don't want them to not trust you, and having it be very simple makes it easier for them to understand.
I never thought about it like that, but it's true. That is just like communication wise, it's just an easy It's an edition of 5 in these 3 sizes, and the price is the same prints 1 through 3. It's just a clear versus, because I just asked you this question in the gallery last week or so about someone who was talking about scaling every single print, like 1,
Yeah,
2,
that's
3.
horrible. It's really hard to figure out. I mean, it would be for us, and then for the person who's buying it, and like, all right, I also feel there's an interesting thing about at least having the 5th one be worth twice as much, but not scaling them up because, like I said, it's easy to understand. But also, once the 5th one is sold, that edition is done. So once the 5th one is sold, the first one is as worth as much as the 5th one. But if you have an edition of 10 and every one goes up 10% or something, that's just what does that mean?
Good point. Was there a point, I mean, you've been showing photography for 25 years. Was there a point where digital printing became, like, I'm assuming that everyone was doing traditional silver at the beginning, and then it was, problematic probably for a little while. And like, when did people start shifting, and when did like inkjet become more prevalent than not?
You know, I can remember when it was, but I didn't exactly write it down. So I would say though, I mean, also it was kind of a weird time because that was also kind of around the time that there was this crash, the housing crash and all that. But I remember it because we were in Miami and we were seeing a lot of people. And up until then, I mean, no relation between those two things, but I think they're around the same time. Up until then, people would ask how something was printed. And I mean, especially if it was an inkjet or a giclée, on watercolor paper or something like that, they were just that was a no-go right there. And
For the
probably,
collector.
huh?
For the collector, like if you
Yes,
said
for the
that this was an
collector.
inkjet.
Yeah, for the collector, I think. I mean, probably also there was something about the quality of the printing improving around that time too. Because early on inkjet prints were not as good. I mean, even iris prints, you remember iris prints? I mean, everybody touted them, but I still feel like they wouldn't hold up compared with inkjet prints from nowadays.
I don't even know what the technical difference is between an iris print and the contemporary
It's
inkjet.
true. Iris print might actually just be an inkjet print.
It may have just been a really big inkjet printer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like there was a
Uh-oh. Am I still here? Because Steve, I'm not seeing you.
It's like we lost Stephen, but let's
Mhm.
see if we can connect back up again. Hold on,
Okay.
Daniel.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that. Give me one
Uh,
second. Come on, camera. All right, we may have to move on without you seeing me for a brief moment.
huh. Okay.
Oh, there we
there
are.
you are.
All right. That was the laptop getting unplugged and me not noticing that it's been running on battery.
I did this panel discussion once where the power went out in the whole neighborhood. It was just right after they had introduced me. He said, and Daniel Aycock, and then the power goes out.
Bye.
Yes, and my wife and partner Kathleen Vance felt like we couldn't leave them hanging. So she ran out into the yard and got these little solar lights that we have and stuck them up around the room. And we used the telephone connection to get back onto the panel discussion.
Because the phone was charged enough.
Yeah, yeah, and it was really funny because I'll show you the pictures of it. It looks very like Blair Witch Project-y.
Oh, I want to see that.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we cut out. Where were we?
We were speculating on what an iris print really was.
Oh, right, because neither of us can remember.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, but anyway, I guess what I would say is around that time, I think probably there was a coincidence of the quality of it, and then it just having been around long enough for it to become accepted. Because nowadays nobody would think twice about something being an inkjet print. But there was a long time where people just wouldn't buy an inkjet print. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's the paper, the ink, the color space has all gotten I mean, you still need someone to know what they're doing printing wise. You still
Yeah.
need to understand color. And it's one of the reasons that I work with a lab, because I know how to print, but Carl.
Oh yeah, no, those levels and stuff have to be maintained, and it's a lot of, yeah. But in the end, I think we'll find out that inkjet prints are much more archival than Type C prints. 50 years from now.
But that's part of the romance, right? Of the
Oh
photograph.
yeah.
We had one situation with that recently, where a collector, where the print head wasn't behind UV glass and was in direct sunlight in their place, and it started shifting, and it wasn't just the print, it
Oh
was
yeah.
like the books, like their entire bookcase got bleached out because
But I
there was
mean,
so
that could
much.
happen to anything in direct sunlight.
Right.
There was that Damien Hirst shark, right?
What happened to the shark?
No, it had nothing to do with sunlight. It just
Oh.
wasn't preserved in the formaldehyde well enough, and look it up. It was pretty funny, actually.
Right, the formaldehyde problem. Yes, that wasn't a sunlight problem. So you're now in Hudson, New York.
Yes.
This is like the fourth or fifth space. You had a couple of like pop-ups, right?
Yeah, I mean, when we left the Lower East Side and we were online for a while, which is the first time in 20 years we didn't have a space for a while. We tried some pop-ups and curated shows in various places in Kingston and Catskill. I guess there was one in Peekskill too, right? I mean, not Peekskill, and Beacon too. Wasn't there at Bow? Did we curate something there?
Sasha did a show there.
I thought we were involved somehow.
You might have been. You might have helped curate it.
Okay, but anyway, we bounced around the Hudson Valley trying various different things. Oh, we had a project space called Mother-in-Laws that was in Germantown, which has gone on to become its own thing. But that gave us a feel for the area, and Hudson really seemed to be, for us, it's probably the largest concentration of galleries together in the Hudson Valley, and also it has I don't know, a pretty established system that we felt like, as somebody once told me, oh, you don't go to the zoo to see one animal. So if you're a gallery out there by yourself, nobody's going just to see the lion. But if you're on Warren Street in Hudson, it's the zoo because there's a lot of them.
So you're the lion keeper and the artwork are the caged animals?
I don't know. I think we might just be the animals.
You might be the animals as well. Just don't feed them. They're not well trained. And it's true though. I mean, like Warren Street is now like, Robin Rice has opened, she closed her space in Manhattan, has moved up permanently to Hudson, which is fantastic. There's another gallery on your street, right, that did, I think, a similar thing, right? That they had
There's
both spaces.
yeah, oh, I'm just spacing on it. She's still got a space in the Lower East Side. Ooh, it'll come to me in a second. But yeah, a lot of galleries there have been connected to the city. Let's see that are oh geez, should have written this down. I was thinking that the space that we were in originally, we had kind of a pop-up space on Warren Street, and that space had been associated with kind of a blue chip Chelsea gallery for a while before oh, Zach Fuhr. Yeah, Zach Fuhr had supposedly had a space there. And Hudson has a connection to the city that a lot of other places, I think, upstate, it's more accessible than almost anywhere, and that the train comes right to Hudson and comes right almost to the street where all the things are. So, and that's really helpful. If you were coming from the city, you could get on the train and be in Hudson in less than 2 hours and be doing what you want to do. And you could be back in the city by dinner time, no problem, if that's what you wanted.
And it's interesting that Hudson has gotten that, because it's like you're 2.5 hours, 2 hours out on Amtrak.
Yeah.
So it's like Metro North stops on all these other towns, but I don't think any of them have had the, like, I mean, Beacon has had a cluster of artists and galleries, but it didn't, I don't think like it's blossomed the same way that
Yeah.
Hudson has for whatever reasons. And I live here. I've been here for the past 7 years, and it's just like, and a close friend was in Hudson for almost 10 years, and so I kind of watched the progression. And yeah, there's something unique about the energy and the people and the traffic that is happening in Hudson that I think is
Yeah,
really good for the gallery.
I read, I don't know, maybe it was a Hudson Valley magazine, but I thought it was on Amtrak's site that they said that Amtrak's busiest site in the state is Hudson.
Interesting.
I am assuming not counting Penn Station in that one though. But yeah, so and you can tell when you're on the train, so many people get off there. But yeah, so I mean it took us a little while to figure that out when we were trying all the places around, because I mean each the Hudson Valley has a lot to offer, and like when we live in Kingston and there's so many artists here and it's a really creative environment, but there's not a street that has all the galleries on it, and that is very helpful.
Yep. Definitely. So I want a couple of pieces of advice. It's already been like 40 minutes, so I just want a couple of pieces of advice from you. What would you tell a gallerist today that is looking at opening a gallery? Like, what are some pieces of advice you would give to like young Daniel?
I would say look around and think about anything else in the world you might want to do first. I mean, yeah, there's something amazing about having a gallery and being able to curate all these shows and put together these things, which, yeah, I wouldn't tell people not to do that. But it is like, I mean, that's the same advice I suppose if you ask a Broadway star what they would tell other Broadway stars to do. Not to equate us with that, but it's like, oh, it's going to be harder than you think it would be. It seems like, oh, I'll get in and I'll become famous and I'll be at the Armory, and then I'll just have an army of assistants doing all this work for me, and I'll just show up for the openings and it'll be great. And
Piece of cake.
yeah, that's it's that way for about 1% of the galleries. Yeah, I would say the same thing for the artists though. So yeah, I don't know if that's any real advice at all, actually, now that I think about it. Let's see, real advice. Like we were talking about Warren Street. I think wherever you are, you want to look for a space where your gallery is closer to, if not other galleries, a museum or something people might be doing art things for. Because I mean, I can say I've heard stories from galleries who were on like the 7th floor in Chelsea when there was the big opening night and people came to Chelsea but didn't go to the 7th floor. Or there's a gallery in Williamsburg, but they're further out and there's 20,000 people came in for that second Friday thing, but they didn't go that far north. It really helps not to be not to force yourself to have to drag people away from where they're going to want to go. I mean, that probably is advice for almost any kind of institution or store. But I think specifically for galleries tend to work together. What, like it or not, they tend to have openings on the same nights, that sort of thing, just by proxy. And if people are thinking about, say, coming up to Hudson and they see that there's 5 openings that night, it's going to be a lot easier than if you're in Catskill and there aren't any or something, you know?
Or if there's 5 openings in Hudson and 1 in Catskill at the same
Yeah.
time.
I mean, I think that is just one thing about getting people through the door. And I mean, other things involve social media presence, which I hate, but my partner Kathleen is good at, and it's important to keep that up. But I think that's something for everybody in every walk of life right now. As a gallery, we are kind of like an agent for the artists, you know, and so we do a lot to promote artists, even when they're not in the show. So we're always trying to do that. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
Okay.
And then my last question, or second to last question, is like, for an artist that is looking for representation, like what are a couple of things that you advise them to do when they're searching for a gallery to work with?
Okay, this is an answer I've given a lot because I've been asked this question a lot and thought about it a lot. And it's I mean, I could say there's almost a little bit of a formula to it. Depending on where you are and how the galleries are accessible to you. Even if you're having to do it somehow online. But I would say try and find the galleries. I mean, don't shoot too high. Don't say I want to show at Gagosian, but look around for the galleries that show work that you like and that is similar to your work somewhat. And I mean, if they're approachable, if you can go to them, you know, when there are events, go to the openings. And, you know, I mean, just become a little bit more known to them. You don't just, we have had plenty of people who just show up with like a portfolio and expect us to drop everything and look at their work out of the blue. And these cold call type situations are not great for galleries. I mean, because you're coming into their like place of business and asking them to give you their time for you without any kind of commitment or anything. But if you go and kind of become familiar with the galleries, they'll, you know, they're willing. Galleries want to look at artwork. They just don't want to be put on the spot.
Right. And I
Um,
think that's like why also the portfolio reviews are like a really good kind of filter for seeing some galleries, because you get a sense that there, you know, there's a decent percentage of the galleries that are at these portfolio reviews that are actively looking for talent. You know, there's some galleries that are there just out of the kind of like supporting the non-for-profit that's running the back end,
yeah.
you know, but most of the galleries that are going are looking to, you know, add someone to their roster. They're not, you know, they're not going to spend a week on location somewhere looking at portfolios.
Oh,
if they
yeah.
are.
I mean, it can't just be about how fun it is to go look at all the work and meet the people. I mean,
It's fun, but
definitely
it's
galleries.
not that much fun.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're not really paid, right? I mean, you get a stipend, they take care of the
Yeah, it's
airfare and the
like,
hotel,
yeah,
but
it's almost like you're paid in food
yeah,
and
well,
alcohol.
yeah, we'll work for vodka. All right, we're almost out of time, and sorry about the little technical glitch. But Daniel, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to share?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I should mention Zoe Weatherall's show, which is up right now. And all these photographs have been taken with a hot air balloon. There are these geometric aerial landscapes. If any of you are in the Hudson Valley, it's definitely worth seeing.
It's a beautiful show.
Yes, and you have several things going on yourself. Do you mention your own things?
We can. No, I mean, I've got a solo show up at a school in New Jersey right now, which is kind of on a you know, if anyone wants to see it, you need to email me and we'll set up a time to meet there. And then I have a solo show opening at the Chucky Depot Museum outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, that is opening in a couple of weeks, which I'm really
Yeah,
excited
that's
about.
going to be cool.
So yeah, well, Daniel, thank you so much. Thank you everybody from B&H for being here. Sorry again for the little technical glitch on my end. And I will see you all back here in a couple of weeks. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. It was great talking with you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.